Good morning, everybody. I want to start with a little story, and like all stories, I'm going to ask everybody to use their imagination, and if I can get everybody to close their eyes and just think about the words that I am about to say, and just imagine this, and imagine this as being your own life. You wake up late. Your alarm clock didn't go off. You race into the bathroom, you turn on the shower. You have the quickest shower in human history, 20 seconds. That's a personal best. You don't have any clean underwear. Yesterday's will just have to do. The elevator in your apartment building is not working, which means getting down 4 flights of stairs is going to be interesting. Now you're going to be really late. You race to the train station, you miss the next train into the city. You wonder if there is a bus going soon, but you don't know, and you don't want to risk the next train leaving without you. You check your phone for work emails. You see that your first meeting has been moved up by 15 minutes. You've been late once already this week, and being late to a team meeting is never a good look. There is no way for you to arrive gently into the boardroom without anybody noticing. You see the latest campaign your client is running on the out-of-home sites at the train station. OMG, the creative is wrong. They are running old copy with old prices. You call up O-Media first to let them know. And then you have to tell them there's been some kind of screw-up. You then call up the creative agency and it goes straight to voicemail. No one is answering. At the same time, you see your client calling you on the phone, and now you're deciding whether to take the call or let it go through to voicemail. You take the client call, you're glad you did, your client is not happy, and you remember your training. Don't make excuses, stay calm, tell them you will fix it, take responsibility. The client calms down and tells you to keep them updated throughout the day. If the ACCC gets involved for advertising, selling misleading prices, this thing will take on a whole new level. When you hear ACCC, your stomach does a backflip. The train arrives at your stop, and now you wait for the doors to open. Problem, for some reason the train is on the wrong track, and the doors are now 1.5 metres away from the platform, and people are jumping to make the platform from the train. How incredibly annoying. This is going to take some doing to get off this train. It's chaos at the station. Worse still, you need to find a bathroom. There's an out-of-service sign on the door of the bathroom you would normally use. What to do? This day has been one thing after another. You are almost about to burst into tears. Now, before you open your eyes, think back to every hurdle and every setback you've experienced. Think about how frustrated and out of control you feel. Now, insert this one crucial fact that I have failed to mention. You're a paraplegic. You use a wheelchair. Now, go through your entire day with this incredibly important fact. How does it change your approach, preparation time, access to staircases, access to public transport, access to bathrooms? How much organisation does it add to your day? You may not have the lived experience to understand the challenges in this story, but that doesn't mean you can't have learned understanding, insight and empathy for people whose lives don't necessarily reflect your own. Open your eyes, everybody. That is one example about what Anathea and I are going to be talking about today, which is unstereotyping our entire society. My name is Ruys Herceg, and I'm the president of WPP in Australia and New Zealand. I am all of those things on the list, but I'm also a migrant kid who grew up in the western suburbs of Sydney, who only speaks English at work. If you come to my backyard on a weekend, you'll find a pig on a spit and very loud Croatians, and my brother who plays a squeeze box, also known as the piano accordion. Where I grew up in my neighbourhood, nobody worked in the media or the advertising industries. I didn't know anybody until I started in my first job in dispatch at Amirati Puris Lintas.
And my name's Anathea Ruys. I'm the CEO of here in Australia and proud to be representing the Unstereotype Alliance today with Ruys. Now, if you just looked at the attributes up on the screen, you could be forgiven for thinking that Ruys and I are exactly the same person. But of course we're not. We're nuanced, we're different. Our backgrounds are different, our experiences, both lived and learned, are different. And unlike Ruys, I did see myself represented in media, advertising and content as I was growing up. But it was in incredibly stereotypical ways. When I saw women, they were generally in the kitchen or cleaning. They were rolling their eyes at silly men who couldn't change a baby's nappy properly. They were worried about wrinkles or getting older. And if I did see them in boardrooms or in business settings, it was performative and stereotypical. Are there any people in the audience today who feel that they saw that representation of them as they were growing up? If so, just raise your hands. There are several of us. But we did see people who looked like us. And we saw people who looked like us because the people who made decisions about what content advertising was created and where it was showing recognised people like me. I looked like their wives, their daughters, their mothers, their sisters, or indeed themselves. So in 2023, are we still reflecting back to Australians, or have we changed as our world has changed? So if we look at Australia, 50% of Australians are female. 21%, like Ruys, speak a language other than English at home. 11% of Australians identify as LGBTQI+, and 18% of Australians have a disability. And just about 4% of Australians are Indigenous First Nations people. But what about our industry, the people in this room, the people that make up the media industry? Well, according to the MFA, we overrepresent the media industry as females. If you feel comfortable to, put up your hand if you're a female in this industry. There are lots of hands up in this room. We also overrepresent in people that speak a language other than English at home. Again, only if you feel comfortable, put up your hand. Isn't that interesting? We don't see many of those languages represented in the media and advertising that we see in our society. We're pretty much on par in terms of LGBTQI+ representation. Again, if you feel comfortable, put up your hand. We significantly underrepresent when it comes to people in our industry who identify as having a disability. If that represents you and you feel comfortable to, put up your hand. And I must ask, is that because our industry is not open, welcoming and accessible to people with disability? Or is it because people in our industry do not feel comfortable answering that question, metaphorically putting up their hand when the MFA asked? And we woefully underrepresent when it comes to Indigenous representation in our industry. If you feel comfortable, put up your hand. So, as we aim to represent Australia back to Australians in more authentic ways, we think about the Unstereotype Alliance and what we're here to talk about. This is an organisation that was founded by UN Women and is supported here in Australia by some amazing brands. You will recognise these brands. They're your clients, they're your partners, they're your suppliers. So you should feel proud that so many brands have said, we recognise there is a challenge and we want to do something about that. But also hold these brands and us to account, because logos on a page do not make change. Action makes change. And for the Unstereotype Alliance, we are coalesced around this vision, that we need to use the power that we have in this room and in rooms like this around Australia, made up of the advertising dollars that we invest, as a force for good, by depicting progressive portrayals of all people. And to do that, we need to ensure diversity across every stage of the advertising process. And those words, progressive portrayals, are so important, because that is the absolute opposite of stereotypes. And stereotypes are bad. They're harmful. They minimise us. They flatten us. And we see those and we feel that. But it's not just us as individuals or as a society that stereotypes hurt. They also hurt brands. It's been well proven, not just in the research we're talking about, but in studies overseas and here in Australia. Brands that represent their communities in authentic and unstereotypical ways sell more products and services. And that's why we're working to create an index that can be applied against advertising, messaging, and ultimately media so that we can start to remove those biases, both conscious and unconscious, from the media we're putting into market. But if you want to make a change, the first thing you have to do is find out what you're changing against. Where do you need to move from? So we have to listen. So we partnered with Ipsos, who are part of the Unstereotype Alliance, and we did a foundational piece of research that looked across the Australian population in a representative way to see where is our starting point. This research has never been done in Australia. There are amazing pockets of research that have been done, but no one has taken this foundational look. We look not just at demographics, but how people feel about being Australian in 2023. What's their perspective on racism, discrimination? What platforms are the most inclusive? And importantly, who do they look to start to tackle some of these inequalities and reduce these challenges? We also wanted to do some deep dives. So we started with the Chinese Australian community, who in the latest census were the largest ethnic group. And what did we find out?
As an industry, there's no surprise here. We have work to do. And I'm sitting in a room at the MFAX with a room full of people who have a megaphone at their disposal. You are the voice. You have an opportunity to shape messages and to really address stereotypes head on. Now, there are 3 things that we can do right here and right now. Think about the way we represent Australia. We've got 290 nationalities and 197 languages, and that is an enormous multicultural community. We have First Nations Australians. We need to make sure that we have representation inside our businesses. Inside our businesses. How do we portray all of these people? How do we actually show them? Is it okay to have an ad on somebody with a disability in a wheelchair post a horrific car accident, or as Dylan Alcott with an Olympic medal around their neck? Can they just be a romantic lead who happens to be disabled? And finally, fighting all of the stereotypes that we see and all of the traps that we fall into. These are the things that we have to do as an industry. These are the ways that we need to wake up to what we are portraying in our society. Now, one of the questions that we asked in the Ipsos research was obvious. How often do you see yourself in advertising? And these were 2 numbers that came out, and on the surface you would think that they are good numbers. 60% of women say that they see themselves in advertising, and I would argue is that because women are still given all of the traditional roles: cook, cleaner, chauffeur for kids' sports on the weekend, homemaker. Is that the very reason, and is that yet again another stereotype versus that of men? The next question we asked is, do you feel you are positively portrayed in advertising? An entirely different question. And here are the numbers. You can see there that less than half of people who have a disability feel that they are positively portrayed. And again, it's interesting that they don't happen to be in advertising because they're a person in the ad or a person in a sitcom or a person in a movie who happens to have a disability. We need these numbers to be as close to 100% as possible. Until we get as close to that, there is work to be done.
We also asked if people feel they're being stereotyped in advertising. And I want to be really clear here. The question was, do you feel your community is stereotyped? And what we see here is that 23% of people with a disability feel they're shown in stereotypical ways. 21% for the LGBTQI+ community, 18% for those born overseas and for women, and 16% for men. But these aren't particularly high numbers. They're not the high numbers we were just looking at. And we're used to responding to really big numbers. 75% of people feel a certain way, that's got to be bad. So is 23% really bad? If you look at the lowest number on this page, 16% of men, that represents 2 million men. That is an enormous number of men who, when they see themselves in advertising, media and content, feel that it's done in a stereotypical way. And if we flip that slightly and we say that the front two rows right here make up about 20 people. Of you 20 people, if this statistic's right, 4 to 5 of you feel that when you see yourself in advertising, content and media, it's done in a stereotypical way. That's othering, that's diminishing, that's removing the nuance of you as individuals, and that's not right. So what are some of the stereotypes that people feel are being shown about them? Well, for women, they feel that they're being shown as homemakers and as more interested in fashion and beauty. LGBTQI+ community feel that they are depicted as not as intelligent as other Australians, or as liberal, not conservative thinkers. People with disability believe that they are depicted as aggressive, angry, and not as intelligent as other Australians. While the over 65 community believe that they are depicted as intelligent, conservative, and hardworking. I spoke to you earlier about the deep dive we did into the Chinese Australian community. 60% of that group believe that racism is widespread here in Australia. And over 73% believe that in order to be successful in Australia, if you're not white, you have to work twice as hard. And then 47%, almost half of this group, believe that they're depicted in stereotypical ways in media, advertising and content. If we go back to that earlier slide, the highest number there was 23%. This is over double that. And what are the stereotypes that they believe they're being depicted as? Hardworking, conservative, intelligent and shy. But that's not bad, is it? Don't you want to be depicted as hardworking and intelligent? The truth is that stereotypes, no matter if they're attached to a word that's historically considered good or historically considered bad, are equally diminishing. Not every Chinese Australian is or wants to be considered as having these attributes. So we need to think about stereotypes as something that we lift, even if historically you would consider them to be positive. And there is work to be done. But the exciting thing about this, MFA exchanges, is that the work can be done by us. Because overwhelmingly, our respondents believe that we have a responsibility to make change in this space. They see media as being such an important role in tackling these changes. In fact, television networks were considered equally as important as politicians in being able to drive change in this space. And they sit just behind the number one group of entities, which are schools and universities. And for all of us who are here to represent brands and to help them do more and do better, this is great because our respondents see brands and companies as having a hugely important role in driving this change. And of course they do. Because as we know in this room, media is culture and culture is media. Not only does what we do informed by the culture around us, but we inform that culture. And in no fewer ways than when you think about the billions of dollars that we invest in platforms and properties that create content that then informs culture. So media planners, buyers, strategists, insight folks, audience builders in this room, you have a role and a responsibility to challenge the stereotypes that you come across every day. To think about this and your partners through a media responsibility lens. And to challenge your clients to live up to the role that Australians expect of them, that they will drive change in this space. And when we think about the change that we can drive, we look at what Dylan Alcott's done in just the last few days with the Change 20 initiative and helping to break down stereotypes for the disability community. And that's the power that we have in our hands. And I'll just share with you 3 little examples that show how we can do this. When Melissa Leong first became the judge on MasterChef, we started to see foods that were enjoyed every day by millions and millions of Australians, but had never shown up on commercial television. I remember clearly the joy and emotion that people were feeling to see themselves being reflected back on this big screen. We talk about the Matildas. Not only did they smash the boundaries of how far an Australian soccer team could go in a World Cup, but they also absolutely broke down the stereotypes that all of us in this room will have experienced. Women's sport isn't interesting. We don't want to watch it. We won't buy tickets for the stadiums, and we won't buy merch. Well, I think we've proven that they absolutely smashed that stereotypes. As Sam Gear says, go the Tillies. They also showed that you can be out and proud in elite sports in a very natural and normal way, and hopefully they will pave the way for other sporting codes that aren't there yet. And the beautiful, frothy, pink sugariness that was the Barbie movie helped to unlock challenging conversations around patriarchy and feminism in a way that was easily accessible by all. So we are media, we are culture, we are the changers, and this is our opportunity to make change. And there are things that you can do immediately on leaving here. And the first thing is to open up your social media. Listen to more diverse voices. Listen to people from the disability community, other groups, people that speak different language to you, people that have different life experiences.
Get out of the office and live in the world. There are suburbs beyond your own. There are suburbs beyond the 5-kilometre radius that most of us live in. Get out, observe, witness, see, eat. Participate in the richness of Australia. That's one of the best ways that you can unstereotype yourself.
And challenge the briefs that you accept into your agencies, the internal briefs you write, the briefs you put out to media. Ask yourself what stereotypes are being perpetuated in those briefs and how can you challenge them? And challenge the folks around you and your clients to do the same.
Challenge and review the way you are recruiting people. Are you recruiting people who look exactly like you? Make sure that on every job application you're looking at disability, other communities, LGBTQI. This is the best way that we can transform our community, park your unconscious bias, and bring into the world of media new faces and new voices. Now, to wrap up, it's really important that after Anathea and I hop off this stage, we get everybody in this room to participate. There'll be information that you can find through the MFA. Become a member of the Unstereotype Alliance and join all those other logos on that page. Get your clients to join. Participate in the conversation. There are incredible tools that you can download from the Unstereotype Alliance community to help you on your journey to unstereotype as much as you can in your business. There'll be information coming your way. If you want to reach out to Anathea and I, you will find us really easily. And we just ask you to open up your eyes to the world and put into practice everything that we've talked about today. Thank you so much for listening.